Good afternoon, family, and welcome to Critical Sense Making Sessions facilitated by your girl, Revolutionary Rika. Today's topic is homelessness. Today's episode is episode 31. Our guest today is Aima the Dreamer. If you haven't seen her on Facebook, make sure you look, or Instagram, make sure you look her up. She is a Bay Area resident who is passionate about QT BIPOC sustainability and safer spaces. She thrives in creating platforms for expressing and sharing our truths through creative outlets and seeing her community come up and win in this game called life. Winning to her looks like thriving in mental, physical, spiritual, and financial well-being. Aima, tell us a little bit more about who you are and choose one word to describe how you're showing up.
Thank you, Revolutionary Rika, for having me here on Critical Sense. It's your girl, Aima the Dreamer. I am an MC, I'm a poet, event producer, culture maker. I've been here in the Bay Area now for the last 20 years. This is definitely home for me and has been a power spot. I've been a lot of places in the world, and this is one of the best. And I love being here and I love creating here in the Bay. So I do music, I do event production, I create safer spaces for queer, trans, Black, Indigenous people of color. And I am in this space. I would say my one word is authentically. That's how I'm showing up today.
I love it. Well, thank you again for accepting our invitation to come on the show. And we're going to jump right into our icebreaker question. If your life was a song title right now, what would it be titled?
Such a good question. If my life was a song title right now, it would be titled Trust.
Mm,
Yeah, my song title would be Trust.
well, and that's needed right now during these challenging, difficult times that we are in. So I love that.
Hmm.
I'm gonna jump us right into our first set of questions. And so I would love for you to start by telling us a little bit about your life growing up.
Thank you for this question. I was born in Chicago, and I was raised by my mother, who is immigrant from Morocco, Casablanca, and was brought over to the States when she was young, and she was my main caregiver. So I'm first generation American on that side, and she was really the black sheep of her family in the sense that she wasn't religious. She was a really progressive thinker and a really alternative and creative type of being. And she raised me to, as such, she really raised me outside of religion and outside of gender normatives. And I bring that up because it she's such a huge influence on my life. She was a bit of a Rolling Stone, a bit of a wild child. She dealt with a lot of uh, challenges just being, Black and African and immigrant here in the United States, especially during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and really had her own battles with substance abuse and alcoholism, and really just did the best she could. And she moved me from Chicago, moving west, and eventually we ended up in Hawaii, where I spent from 9 years old to 19. And then when I was 19, I came to, in Hawaii, we call the United States the mainland. So I came to the mainland, and I ended up like hitchhiking cross country up and down the West Coast. I've seen almost the whole country. I've been to almost every state here in the States at a really young age, and then finally settled in the Bay Area when I was 20 years old, almost 21. So I've lived a lot of different lives in this life. And, I was like raised by someone who really pushed the envelope on my own development, my own creative development, and in her own way encouraged me to be a critical sense maker and a critical thinker. Um, and when I look at my life, I look at it like I've been really fortunate to have the opportunities to experience a lot of different walks of life. It's created a lot of empathy in me. And I definitely owe my level of empathy and compassion to the way that I was brought up. So yeah, kind of lived all over and experienced a lot of different cultures.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your authentic story. That was really powerful to listen to. And especially from this point, looking back, it's, as you're living through the moment, you kind of like you take for granted a lot of the things that are that's happening, some of the experiences that you were afforded. But looking at it from this standpoint is always just very insightful and powerful, and you can see how those tough times, taught you some great lessons, provided you with some amazing skills that you could use in other ways. So, thank you.
Truly.
So, how did housing stability impact you?
Yes, that's such a powerful question. And I think, especially in a time right now where in the Bay Area, we're faced with so much housing instability. Um, I am someone who grew up for most of my youth and young adult life with housing instability. I was houseless. I don't like to say homeless. I like to say houseless because I do believe home is where the heart is. And so I was without a house off and on my entire childhood and then into my young adulthood. And I left my home at 15 and decided that that was the best decision for me to make my own way and my own path. And the way that housing instability has a growing up affected me was really it's really been a challenge to um, be grounded and move from a place that it has a foundation. You know, when I think of housing stability, I think of foundation, I think of sanctuary,
Mm,
I think of, especially as a woman of color, especially as a Black woman, I I think of like the one place in the world where you're supposed to be safe, where you can check out, where you can close the door, where you can work on yourself, where you can, be safe to feel your range of emotions, right? Because it's like as soon as you step outside of the door, everyone's got something to say about how you feel and how you're showing up. And so for me, housing is synonymous with foundation, safety, and sanctuary. And not having that growing up really developed me to be someone who is constantly in search of that. I think that's one of the challenges. Um, and also a highlight of being someone who really had to learn survival skills at a really young age has allowed me to be adaptable and has allowed me to look at solutions in a lot of different ways. And so I bring that up um, not to romanticize it, but just to say that there's a blessing in the lesson, there's blessings in the pain when you come on the other side of it. And I just think it's important to bring that up. So yeah, I would say that those are the things that come up for me.
I mean, you making this really real for our viewers, Aima, and I appreciate you for doing that because I think with all the stuff that we have to contend with in the world, like you said about romanticizing, sometimes we do that, and instead of actually looking at um, just the truth of the matter and what's really occurring and how that's impacting generations of people. So I really appreciate you for sharing that and just keeping it real with the viewers. How did your family equip you to handle the challenges that came along with the housing instability?
My family, my greater family really didn't know what to do with my, I guess, primary family unit, which was me and my mother. Um, I think that in their heart of hearts, they really wanted to help, but their help often kind of showed up as ultimatums,
Mm,
often showed up as judgment. Like I had shared at the top of the show, my mother had a substance abuse problem, and I think there was a lot of, well, we'll offer you help, but you have to show up in a certain way.
Mhm.
And in retrospect, when I think about her, with a compassion, from a compassionate place, I think we should just help people. There shouldn't be only if you fit into these categories, only if you do these things, or that you get rewarded with this help or support. I think it should just be given freely. And so I know that my family, when they reached out in their way, it was from a place of love. But um, unfortunately, it wasn't it wasn't helpful help. It was their interpretation of what they thought would fix the problem, right, and fix us. And when I think about it now, I see like this is a systemic problem,
Mhm.
and this problem is greater than just one addiction. It's greater than just one person having a hard time. This is about the systems that are in play that keep us down, keep us from education, keep us from resources, keep us from housing, basic human rights.
Yes.
Basic housing is basic. At the very least, we should all have housing. And don't even get me started about how I think rent is extortion, but um, you know, in this place where housing should be a human right. So that's kind of how my family showed up. They just showed up very conditionally.
Mhm.
They showed up very conditionally. I think when my primary caregiver needed unconditional support.
Yeah.
And eventually, like I had said, I had left my home at 15. And so then in turn, my primary caregiver, um, she it was really hard for my mother to see that I was going to take my own life in my own hands and say, okay, you're not able to care for me how I need. This is literally a matter of life or death. And um, even though I'm still going to be in a similar situation, like when I left at 15, I was still homeless for another 5 years. Um, that I just felt like I could care for myself better. And so her family wasn't really able to support her, and she in turn wasn't really able to support me. And like you had touched on, it is this generational thing. And I'm hoping, that it stops here with me, and that my story and my truths can help and give reflection to others. And perhaps maybe if I have my own family, to my own family. And you just really see how even with the best intentions, uh, you know, victims can become victimizers, and like we play out the pattern, right? Unless we get help, unless we're held, unless we address our trauma or generational trauma. And so that's I could see that happening in my family. And now, and I come from an immigrant family, and immigrant values are they're really interesting, because now as an adult, I hear my elders say to me, I'm so proud of you. You never asked us for anything, right? You never asked us for money. And so they're giving props to this thing. And I'm thinking, I could have really used the money. I was like a child, I was really a child out here on these streets, that I'm fortunate. I have a lot of guides and a lot of ancestors. So I'm fortunate, as a female body person, that I didn't I didn't see the worst of the spectrum, right? There's a spectrum, and I didn't see the worst, and I'm very fortunate. That's not true for a lot of women-bodied people. But yeah, my family be like, oh, I'm so proud you never asked us for money, you never asked us for anything, because to them, that is a sign of weakness, and that is a sign of failure. And it just makes me want to change the narrative so much that you know, inshallah, ideally, like we don't shouldn't even have to ask. And it should, if I have, then you have. In my opinion, it should just be given. And so it's interesting now to be older and to listen to that reflection. And I mean, I'm really estranged from my family. I have respect for my elders, but I'm not vulnerable with them. I'm not close with them. And part of that is that dynamic of like, I don't feel like I can be myself around you, that you would hear me, that you would see me, and that you would help me, especially when you're so proud, that you did it. Yeah. So family, it's complicated.
That was a whole. I'm still trying to process a lot of what you just said, but you left off a title from your list of amazing things that you do because you just preached. Like
Well,
seriously,
I'm an MC, so master of ceremonies.
yes, because you basically people expect you to show up, and we got to meet people at where they are. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs are real. If those basic needs aren't met, you are going to have trauma reactions. You're going to behave in that manner, right? And so all of us have intergenerational historical trauma, along with our individual trauma that we've accumulated. But I like that you lifted that up. People have conditions, and it's like you got to meet people where they are. Now, after a while, you expect them to grow, but you
Right.
can't expect them to show up and they're medicating because there's a need being unmet. That's trauma. That's unaddressed trauma. I
You
resonate.
gave me chills. Yes.
I resonate with your story because a lot of what you said I experienced, especially as a transitional age youth, being young and just dealing with, trying to make good choices, trying to cultivate my spiritual practice, knowing that I had a special light, but the world is trying to make you into something else. So it's that struggle, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, thank you so much, Aima. That touched my heart. That really did.
Thank you, Rika. And I just want to point out something that you said in this moment about self-medicating, because, earlier I said substance abuse and alcoholism when I was talking about my mother, but really I have in my adult life come to understand that is also self-medicating. That is doing the best you can so you can get up in the morning, so you can deal with this white supremacist, patriarchal, racist ass country that is literally chopping you at the knees at every turn.
Yep.
I'm trying to watch my language at every turn. And so I really appreciate that you said that, because I do believe that too.
Yep.
I do. Yeah. Whether it's methamphetamines or speed because a woman's work is never done and you gotta like be up, or it's coffee or whatever your addiction is, we're just trying to deal.
Right. And we have to educate people too, because it's food, it's sex, it's TV, it's all these other things too that we do to numb our emotions and numb our feelings so we don't have to experience either isolation or loneliness or whatever it is, abandonment, all these things that could have happened along the way. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
have like a panel day with you, Aima, because this is like we need young people in here, especially our young people who may be experiencing housing instability. I was one. I was going from pillar to post, from cousin to family to aunties. Couch surfing
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
you have nowhere to stay. Like
Hmm.
we're giving you a place, but that's not permanent. And
Right.
so,
And it's not necessarily your home, and you don't feel ownership. And that ownership is so important, because when you own the place where your body resides, then you can own your body, and you can own your mind, and you can own your heart, and you can own your thoughts, and you can own your choices.
mhm,
And so it's really fundamental. And then
yes,
add being Black, add being gay, add all being a woman, add all that other stuff on top of it. Yeah, it's like a real fundamental thing, ownership of where you are.
intersectionality is real. That's a lot to hold. So absolutely. Last question in the first set. How did your school experiences support your growth during this time?
Yes, that is a fantastic question. I School was really hard for me because home was really hard, and so I actually scholastically did well,
Mhm,
but my grades never reflected that because I missed so much school.
mhm,
And attendance, I don't know how it is nowadays, but attendance then in the 80s and 90s was such a huge part of your grade. And so although I would be doing my work and it would be a work, I was failing.
mhm.
And every year that I failed, I would get put in classes that weren't challenging, which created a lot of depression. And I honestly give thanks to my mother, who installed the love of reading in my life super early on. And when I say reading saved my life, it saved my life. It was the only place where I could imagine a better world, another world, other realities. I mean, I remember being like 13 and reading Temple of My Familiar by Alice Walker and just being so influenced, or like Octavia Butler, just these books by these women where they were just painting these other worlds, other realities, and other ways of looking at myself. So reading saved my life. School was school was a reminder of where I didn't fit in,
Mhm.
what was lacking. It was hard to relate. It was hard to relate to my peers. We just weren't on the same page. We weren't dealing with the same things. And I did make it to high school. Made it to my junior year. I dropped out at my junior year, and I made it through high school for as long as I did because of the theater program. So creativity, reading, creativity, expression, performance, theater was my first love after reading. Second love, I guess, was my second love, and that's what kept me in school for as long as I did, because you had to go to school to participate in that program. But eventually, the realities of what was happening at home and what was happening with my mother was too heavy, and the only uh, the only help that the school had offered me was to put me into the foster care system. And I fortunately, I fortunately got out before that, because as anyone who's listening to this knows about the foster care system, it's dangerous. It's dangerous for young women. You're lucky if you get into a loving home, but it's not a safe space,
Mhm.
in my opinion. Um, and so I did reach out at one point to my teachers, and they were really overwhelmed. They didn't quite really know what to do or how to support me. And it, I made the decision then that it was in my best interest to leave school and to start working.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you know, I've been working ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, so school was hard. School was really hard, and I it's something that I struggle with today. Like, it's interesting now in this pandemic year, I've really been reconsidering what it might be like to go back to school. It feels like more accessible than it ever has before for me. And also, I've literally been laboring since I was, I mean, before I left my home situation, I've had a job since I was 12. So I've like just been laboring and laboring for my art too. Like, I'm an artist, and then I'll have like 3 jobs to support this art life. And so this is like the first time where everything is slowed down, that I'm reconsidering it. But there's a lot of trauma there, and this is kind of where that trauma lives, of just like, wow, the last time I was in school, like why did I leave? So I'm just sort of sitting with that in this moment.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Thank you. I like that you lifted up how therapeutic reading and art could be. It made me think of a family of students I had. It was 2 brothers and a younger sister, and they were all like in between elementary and middle school. And they lived in one of the housing projects in San Francisco, and they used to be shooting all the time. And so one night they were shooting, and the mom, after they got done, she went to look for them, and they were under the bed. The oldest brother was reading a book to them. And we had been exposing them to literature, like Black authors in our program, and helping them build their home libraries. They would get 8 books every summer. And so when the mom came back to tell us this story and to say, we got involved because of the incentives. We wanted gift cards. She said, but when I saw the power of literature the other night, she was like, she believed in the work we were doing because she saw how it impacted her young people. So you sharing that piece about, even though you may be surrounded on all sides, feeling pressed, you still have strategies and outlets that you can use to help you make it through. And then art just being a place for outlet to just let it all out. Thank you for highlighting that. That has been very therapeutic too in my process, my journey of really trying to find my purpose. Doing some stuff that I haven't done since I was probably in my 20s, but tapping into those. I swear I was going to be a rapper from like 8 till I was 18, right? And then I just never did it again. And then last year in my doctoral program, he was like, okay, turn in some assignments. And I'm like, I want to rap this. I'm going to just rap it. But I was able to tell my story and the confidence to not be afraid to share, and especially those vulnerable moments, because somebody will learn from that. They will not have to go through the same thing you went through. So thank you so much, Aima, for just lifting those things up as strategies.
You're so welcome. And I love that you came back with the bars. Came through some bars now. I mean, that's why I got into hip hop too. Like I never got into hip hop music because I thought I was going to make a career out of it. It was for therapy. When I
Mhm.
started doing open mics at 17, it was for therapy, and hip hop was the only music that I was listening to. I mean, I'm a child of the 90s that I was listening to that that really, where I heard my own story. It was like the first time I really heard, wow, like other people are living on the streets, other people are struggling to eat, other people, but then there's this other context about it, like for me, like I was really lucky to hear the golden era of hip hop where there was like always a revolutionary twist, and like Sister Soldier and KRS-One and Tribe Called Quest, where it's these very real stories of what I was experiencing, but they were pulling themselves up and uplifting themselves. And so it's powerful.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to move us into the second set of questions. And so, how did experiencing homelessness at a young age impact your career choice?
Um, that is a great question. Uh, you know, it's funny because I I'm struggling with the idea of like, have I made a career choice? Like, do I have a career? Like, is following your heart a career?
Mhm.
um, you know, being having housing instability, being houseless, um, it for me as someone who is a survivor of that, and I'd like to say a thriver
Mhm.
from that, if I could be so bold to put that out there, um, it really, it really, when you have nothing, you don't have anything to lose.
Mm.
I think that's the core of it. Um, I have experienced the bottom. And so there really is only one way to go. And it has made me, for me, my personal experience, it has made me bold.
Mhm.
It has it has forced me to learn how to ask for help.
Mhm.
I am sitting here today because I am supported by a greater community, and because I've had the ability to ask. I'm really lucky. I I I don't know if I'm the rule or if I'm the exception. I'm somewhere in between, but I would love for all of these things to be the rule, that you are would be able to ask for help and ask for support and receive it. So for me, like having nothing, there was only one way to go, and that was to lean in and to ask for help. And so that has definitely affected my career as an artist and as a creative. And you know, um, it's my therapy. And so if I'm not expressing and creating, I really feel sick and I really feel depressed. And at times I feel like I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this life anymore. And so that is another effect of it, of needing to have a positive outlet. Because if there's not a positive outlet, I'm afraid as to what the other choice of an outlet would be. So that's a big effect as well.
Well, I want you to know that people are watching you. And sometimes we don't, we are because of the light, right? You have so many opportunities and responsibilities, and we always sometimes we neglect to cultivate and take self-care moments. But people are watching. You are a light. You have helped so many that you probably will never even know that you have. You have planted seeds in the lives of people who in probably 10, 15 years that it will blossom. But you keep showing your light and sharing your wisdom because you are a powerful force.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I enjoy just learning about new topics from you because a lot of things that I didn't know about. And when I look at your posts, I'm like, oh wow, I never thought about that. So it's something else to look up and read about and learn about. So I appreciate you so much, Aima.
I appreciate you too, Rika. Thank you.
In what ways did it affect personal and professional relationships, like housing instability and just moving around? And like you talked about, kind of that nomadic experience.
Yes, this is a great question. Excuse me. Well, it is affected my personal relationships greatly. Um, I'm just entering into my fourth decade of life, and I'm finally like ready to unpack some stuff because I like first 30 plus years, I was like survival mode. Nope, can't look at that, can't even touch that. Because if I open up that door, I'm not going to make it to work. If I open up that door, I'm not going to be able to handle it. So now I'm in this place where I'm just slowed down enough, just have been through enough highs and lows to start looking at that. And what I'm finding is that this history of mine has really created a fight or flight
Mhm.
experience for me. And so I find myself um, like really being very afraid of rejection, really afraid of abandonment. Um, just these like core things, like really that thing of like when you do that inner child work and you look at your inner child and she's in there and she's like, don't leave me, like don't hurt me, like real talk that shows up in your adult relationships. And so I'm in this moment, like really sitting with that, really exploring that and seeing how that has, in terms of like um, personal relationships, friendships, romantic partnerships, and in business relationships too, of being like, before you hurt me, I'm out.
Wow.
Or like, um, preemptively shutting things down, preemptively closing the door, um, not wanting to take up too much space. That also shows up, like, because I couch surfed, I was like always a guest, never, like embodied in my home or my space. That's another part of just like, let me just do everything correct and make everyone feel good and make everyone feel safe and not take up too much space. And then people will want me around and they'll want to work with me and they'll want to, be with me. And so, um, it's like this pendulum, right, that swings back and forth. Like on one hand, I'm like, before you even hurt me, I'm out. And on another hand, I'm like, I'm going to go above and beyond my own capacities to make sure everybody is okay so that I'm safe and I'm like welcome in the space. So it is really deep. And it's not hard to say out loud. It's this is like a hard mirror to look into. And I often think about myself like, if I was my own best friend, like what would I say to myself, And I'd be like, girl, you're tripping. Like, don't worry about that. Like, you're safe, you're loved. And that's like a process of like really coming back to self-soothing and like really like reparenting, because I do want to have healthy relationships and I do want to have healthy business relationships and career relationships. This is like a key to that. So this question is so right on time, Rika. Like this is exactly what I'm thinking about and looking at, and obviously like still formulating an answer around it, but it's really important to look at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How did you incorporate the skills you learned into your everyday life?
Great question. Um, I think it is incorporated by the ability to hold huge amounts of space for people. Um, I I have a saying where I say smudge don't judge.
Mhm.
Like really, like I have a large amount of empathy and a huge capacity for empathy because I have been so many different types of people. I have seen so many different types of people, and I've learned so much on the streets about how people get there, And the stories are varied, just as people are varied. The stories of why people are where they are so varied. And that is a skill that I definitely learned from living for so long on the streets, is a mass amount of empathy and of compassion. And it also feeds my storytelling because I've experienced a lot. And so I think, when you have someone who has seen a lot of things, then your stories are rich. And I would like to use, I would like to use that ability to um, really like help people feel seen. That's a big one for me. There was so many times in my life where I didn't feel seen. And so when I throw events, I'm a queer woman and I throw a lot of queer events where some, like really, I just want people to be like, I see you. I acknowledge you. I witness you. You're valid. Your experience is valid. Regardless of if you're academic or not, you're brilliant. And actually, you already have a PhD in your life. You're a doctorate of you. And that's important to me. So that's another skill, is like the power to witness.
That, woo, hoo, hoo, hoo. I heard that community cultural wealth in that storytelling you talked about.
Yeah.
Teach people how to be seen, heard, and valued, right? And celebrating that genius, because we all, from my time and work that I did with the executive director of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, Dr. Cheryl Davis, there was a quote by Benjamin E. Mays that says, everyone was born into the world, every man and woman was born into the world to do something unique and different. And if they don't do it, it won't get done. And so thinking about your purpose, and so helping people to tap into that. But when I heard you say that storytelling, that's the beginning of it, right?
Yeah.
Using what you've gone through to empower others, right?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Mhm.
Woo. Okay. Moving us into our third set of questions. I'm gonna have to have you back a couple times. We're gonna have to I'm gonna have to create a separate series for
You
you.
got me forever. Come on, Rika, let's go. What we want to do next?
So, what strategies have helped you overcome your trauma?
Oh, great question. Um, well, spiritual practice is a big one. Big one. I was I come from two family lineages that were very religious. I was really turned off by religion, and so when I came back to the idea of spirituality,
Mhm.
it was really uplifting for me. And like through that process, um, the power of prayer, the power of affirmation. I'm a poet. I'm an MC amongst other types of art, and so learning about the power of the word and going like really deep into that idea of like vibration, prayer, intention, manifestation, and using that to like reprogram reprogram myself. So that that is a big tool that I use, is prayer, spirituality, practice, intention, and affirmation. Um, will you repeat the question again?
Sure. How have you? What strategies have helped you overcome your trauma?
Let's try. Thank you. Yes. So that and strategies. Crying. Can crying be a strategy?
I mean,
Crying, letting myself cry, not judging myself, like release, crying, uh, singing, yelling, um, moving memories, emotions, trauma that's stuck through the body in some outward way. And if you are listening to this, whoever's listening to this out there, and you judge yourself for crying, please let it go.
mhm.
Let it go and cry. It is imperative. I don't I don't know where I would be. I'd probably be really sick, actually. I'd probably have illness, really deep illness, if I didn't allow myself to cry. That's a huge strategy. And humor is a strategy. I have a sick and twisted sense of humor, and it's helped. It's helped, and it really has, to be able to laugh at myself, and not in a cruel way. I don't like cruel humor, but just the humor of like, wow, can you believe we made it this far? This, you can't make this up. This is fucking, excuse me, funny. This is funny. This is funny. Like I'm either, I'm either crying or I'm laughing. So I think humor, the ability to self-reflect and the ability to just like laugh at the pain in that way that allows us to keep going is also a really potent strategy. And then a strategy that I'm leaning into right now is more movement, just trying to move my body more. And I've been like doing this practice where I just dance in my living room every day, like pandemic style, because we can't go out anymore. Right. So just like moving my body and just like doing things where uh, it allows me to practice not judging myself and to be unapologetic. So those are some strategies that I've used to deal. And yeah.
Thank you. So
Mhm.
practical strategies too. I mean, all of these things I definitely feel like can help you when you're dealing with the triple pandemic that we all are, right? Um, how do you use your story to empower others?
Well, I would like to think that I'm using my story to empower others by owning it. Like, again, that word unapologetically, being myself. I would like to think that that is in inspiring others, owning my story, owning my flaws, owning my body, owning my background, owning my history, and not in a like oppression Olympics type of way, but just of like, this is what it is, and this is what it looks like, and this is, you know, the things that people like about me. Like, yeah, there's a lifetime behind that quality that you like, and so I'd like to think that that's one way that I'm using my story to empower people. And then I really am, I say I write rap spells for my future selves. Like I'm really just outwardly sharing how I deal, like outwardly sharing how I'm coping, outwardly sharing how I'm dealing with what's coming up for me. And I do that a lot on Instagram. I've like really been enjoying that platform. I love the visual, the music, the pictures, the video, and exploring like other types of mediums and media like that.
Mhm.
And so using my story in that way of just, putting it out there and connecting with people. And it's really powerful. It's this like a direct feedback loop. And so I can like put something out, about how I'm feeling or how I'm dealing, and someone can directly say, me too, or like, yeah, I feel that, or have you tried this, or that inspired me. So that's I think a big way that I use my story.
Thank you. Ooh, that's powerful. How do you cultivate community as an adult?
Mm. Um, it's so strange because I'm really practicing on being in this present moment. And I like often find myself going, well, before the pandemic, I was doing all these things. And now like, who am I? And basically spent 2020 like having my ego completely destroyed and broken down. And so now just like, what does that question look like today? Like, how am I cultivating community? I think, to be honest, like this moment right here is an example of it where like, like we're community, but we haven't really, spent much time together. But I saw you put a call out and I just leaned in. I was like, okay, I'll share. I was like, and then I was like, what's important to me? I'm like, what can I share? And I'm like, oh, share myself, like
Yeah.
real talk, not like, I mean, especially when you're in the entertainment business, you're like, here's the face, here's the public facing face. And, like everything that face generates and all the opportunities. And I was like, whoa, here's like a moment to make new community, be authentic. So I think that right now in the present moment of today, I'm cultivating community by leaning in, taking chances, when people are reaching out, reaching back. And when I need to reach out, pushing past like my own stuff that comes up, fear, like I was sharing, like rejection, abandonment, like all that stuff, and or like not being cool enough or not whatever comes up, and just being like, hey, like I want to work with you, or I want to try.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what it's been looking like lately.
Thank you so much. And so the final question in that set is, how does that community support your growth?
Ah, I'm so supported. It's crazy. I'm like, I like wake up every day like, wow, I can't believe people still want to like rock with me. Um, I mean, pretty much, I can a lot. I mean, a lot of the way that I'm communicating with my community is through social media because we're social distancing. Whereas before, I think I had shared that I threw events and I would throw these big events, and so there was a lot of opportunity to physically see my community. But now it's really just asking for help like on these platforms, and then allowing myself to receive the help.
Mhm.
Help is asking for help and receiving help. It's two-part process. And so that's a huge way that I've been supported is I've been allowing myself to dream, to be more creative,
Mhm.
to not judge my ideas, and then putting those ideas out there and asking for support, and then seeing like this broad community. And now, even beyond the Bay Area, because these social media platforms are global, they're national and international, and just receiving support. And yeah, this last year I've been really supported by my artistic collaborators. I'm in a bunch of different bands. I'm in an all-female hip hop group called Femme Deadly Venoms, and we made an album, and that's been like a huge support to my creative and heart and mental process. And then also working at the African American Art and Culture Complex and working with y'all, and having opportunities there to like express and be held. And we just finished the PDA program, the professional development program, and so just like yeah, just like leaning in and taking the opportunity to be supported versus sitting back and being like, nobody helps me, like I'm alone, or like whatever the story is that we tell that is very much true for us. Now, I'm not saying that story is not true. And there's other true stories.
Yes.
And so like the more that we take on being the narrator,
Mhm.
um, the more we change the narrative.
Yes. I like
So
that. Ooh, I
yeah,
like the more we take on being the narrator, the more we change the
yeah. I'm quotable.
narrative. um, so we're in our final set of questions, and I would love for you to
Mhm.
share anything you're doing to help others that may be dealing with housing instability in their past or maybe even currently.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Um, I'm not doing anything on a super official level,
Mhm.
but I definitely I have like participated in a lot of grassroots mutual aid
Mhm.
situations where like we feed hundreds of people, we collect donations. I'm very much familiar with the encampments in my own neighborhood and area, and like always giving out food and masks, like what do you need, like and then really paying attention to what's going on in my community, like who are the orgs that are holding this space, and making sure that I am putting my body, my labor, my time, and my intention to give to those spaces, and supporting those orgs that support everyone, and then also using my platform to amplify everyone who I believe in, who's doing good work. And so those are the main three things that I've been doing, but I am definitely open to doing more. Literally, again, before this pandemic, I was working so hard and running myself so hard that this is like really the first time that I am like, I actually can give. I can give in this whole new way, or this way that I really want to. So yeah, just leaning in more to that. And again, just like using any of my creative outlets to share the story, share the message, create new narratives, and push the envelope on what we can be.
Beautiful. Have you taken any action to address our current challenges with housing instability?
I don't know. I participate in a lot of actions. So I am definitely someone who will be on the streets and putting my body on the line and putting my voice behind campaigns that I believe in. I One way I take direct action is by voting. Yeah, yeah, vote every time for everything. And if I'm not voting, then I'm outside yelling about what I think should be done. No, not yelling, but using what I have, my voice, my mind, and my body, to back things that I believe in. And I would say that's how I've been taking direct action consistently, is by doing that.
Love it. Love that. Advocacy is important. And a lot of times people think they cannot do certain, they're thinking big picture. I'm not going to go join a protest, right? But
Right.
different ways to advocate. And so
Oh yeah.
I like that you highlighted that.
Yeah, we when last year when there was like months and months of protests, we were like out on the street, a couple of my collectives, and we weren't official, but we just knew we needed to do something. And so we just like put the call out to the community and ended up like feeding 700 people one day, or like getting like feminine sanitizing products for like women, and just like flushing like our houseless communities. These are our brothers and sisters. These people are not separate from us. They are us.
Yes.
And they have been me, literally. So it's not separate. So you can do something at any level you're at, even if that's just sending an email or making a phone call. It's like we're all of different abilities too. Like not everybody has the ability to walk and stand and talk, but wherever you are, if you have a calling to do something, there is something to be done.
Absolutely. And so our final question, how can we improve, in your opinion, how can we improve housing insecurities in the Black community?
Such a powerful question. Um, mm. So many things come to mind, Rika. Um, it's almost overwhelming, and it like what's coming to mind feels really emotionally based versus like strategic or political. Like I don't know, like can we please open up like some of these empty buildings that are just sitting here? Like I mean, I just feel like there's these like basic things, like can we put human lives over corporate interest? Like when we're talking about you know the Black community, it's like can we see the value in our community, and like the value in our lives? And i I feel like there's been so much said on a political platform, and so much said on a strategic platform, that it just really comes down to like if our government wanted to, they could. Like I feel like it's always kind of like put on us. um it's put on us to save us from something that's like outside of us, and is so strategic in its making, and so like well played for so long. And then they're like, okay, well, how do you fix it? It's like, well, are you willing to you know are you willing to like dismantle uh what you're standing on? Are you willing to let go of your comforts a little bit, so that someone else can come up from discomfort? And so that question is really hard. It feels really emotional, and I want to say that like it's really going to take it's really going to take some s- some like real dismantling of uh, of like this deeply ingrained um, oppression that
Mhm.
is like in every element, and especially in housing resource
Yep.
and property and development.
Mhm.
You know, like we really have to commit to housing people, housing Black people, housing our communities. We have to commit to it. And I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
But I want, yeah, I want to work on it. So,
thank you for even considering it because I think it is
yeah,
um, that we have to get we have to dismantle. That is definitely my strategy. But I also think there needs to be some deep heart work done because they need to be able to see the humanity in every other in our communities of color. And
truly.
the conditioning that has happened to us in this country, we have to unlearn so much, and there's so much to learn.
Yeah.
And humanity to me is off kilter. So just thinking about what you said, I really feel like it really starts with it's twofold. It's the dismantling of these oppressive systems of privilege and power that only really serve the 3%, 1%, whatever we want to call it this year. But we have to dismantle that, and we have to do some intense hard work. Everybody's been impacted by. I mean, everybody in the world.
Everyone.
In the world.
Yeah. Everyone.
Yep.
Yes, 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 yes. It's like until the you that is benefiting off of our community being without our basic human rights, until that you is willing to let go of their denial and their comfort, and yeah, like you're saying, like that heart work, like really see us, like we are human beings. You
Mhm.
know, we're not like some like stereotype that that allows you to be comfortable with making the choices that keep people from their basic human rights. I'm down to do the work though.
Yes.
I'm going to do it till my last breath.
Oh, I
So
love your commitment. That's powerful. I just want to thank you, Aima the Dreamer, for coming on and sharing your light on this critical sense making sessions. I think I'll probably have you back. I'm telling you, I'm thinking of another um, podcast I need to create. But I wanted to just lift up a few of the highlights I heard, pearls I heard you say. I wrote down like a whole page of notes. I'll just tell you that. So you'll get those in the letter. But the three that really stuck to me was victims become victimized, can become victimizers unless you get the help. And
mhm,
so helping, I think, especially in my own journey, um, a lot of people who were hurt in their childhood ended up growing up and then taking on some of the things that happened to them, doing the same thing. And of course, as adults, you don't get the same. We tend to forget, like people are in these spaces because of things that have happened, and there were no resources or supports there. So I like that you definitely mentioned that. Um, the other thing was developing a spiritual practice, a prayer life, intentions, positive affirmations to reprogram your mind, body, and soul. That is
mm,
crucial for us. I was thinking about post traumatic slave syndrome and just
mm,
how those slave behaviors, things that we had to do to survive, have been passed down. And we are still using that to survive. We're in survival mode, and many of us are not thriving. And so, helping people get the emotional intelligence skills they need, and helping them to get the support, the radical healing support that they need to overcome their traumatic childhood experiences as well. And then,
mm,
lastly, just the importance of owning your own story and unapologetically telling it. You own your entire existence. That's what I heard you say. Like
mm, Mm,
you're expert on your existence. Nobody can
mhm,
tell your story but you.
mhm,
Your mother
mhm,
could tell pieces of your story, but she couldn't
mhm,
tell your whole story. And so,
mhm,
helping people understand the power in that and storytelling, that's a tradition in all really cultures of color that has
mhm,
been passed down. That is the way that we've been able to really retain our histories and
mhm,
just be able to celebrate with the ancestors, the
mm,
sacrifices that they made so that we could be here and hopefully tap into our purposes and leave something for those coming behind us. So,
mm.
like I said, I really thank you for coming on and having this conversation with me. We will definitely have to have a follow up. But if there's one last piece, a tip or piece of advice that you would like to share with the viewers, the last voice they hear will be yours.
Ah, thank you so much, Revolutionary
Mhm.
Rika. Thank you so much for this space, for this platform, for this opportunity to make critical sense of this moment, for your thoughtful questions, for your intention, your integrity. I would just love to leave everyone with the fact that we have survived 100% of our worst days and we're still here, and that is not to be dismissed. And if you can take that with you, know that whatever you're feeling in this moment, there will be another moment to feel something else. So I think I'll leave it at that.